Mute. Hey. We did it. Another successful use of modern technology. We don't take it for granted. No, sir. So it's the Rambam's yartzeit, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. So I'd like to speak a little bit about the Holy Rambam, and then we'll just jump right into the parsha. Okay, let's get comfortable here. Look at that. Okay. So just to get the time right. So the Rambam was born in 1135, 12th century, in Cordova, Spain. He was born Erev Pesach, with stories about that. And he died in 1204 in Egypt, in Old Cairo, Fastat, Egypt. So he was born in Cordova, Spain, and they had to flee from the Almohad Muslims when he was even before Bar Mitzvah. There were other Muslims who had been there in Spain before the Almohad ones arrived that let other people follow their religions. That if they believed in one God, they were very kind and let them follow their religions. They were lower status, but that was a big deal. But the Almohad was become Muslim or death. So they had to flee the Rambam as a child with his father and brother. And first they were in Fez, Morocco. They crossed over to North Africa. I guess his mother must have passed away when he was young because she's not mentioned after that point. And then they finally settled in Fastat in Old Cairo. He had been in business with his brother, David, who died. He drowned. There was some ship, there was some merchandise they were involved with. They had been partners, and the Rambam suddenly had to support his family, his brother's family. And that's when he became a doctor. And he became the doctor to Saladin, who was the ruler of that whole area of Egypt and etc. The Rambam was the personal physician of the royal court. He was a world-class doctor. He was a philosopher, an astronomer. There's 18 medical books in Arabic written by the Rambam, speaking about pharmacology, depression, a whole book of depression. Remember, this was the 12th century, that a book on depression. Intimate issues, an encyclopedia of herbs in 4 languages. He would give the name of the herb in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and Arabic so that everyone would know which herb he was speaking about. These were all healing herbs. What else? He gave his schedule once to one of his students who translated from Arabic into Hebrew. So his schedule was in the early morning, he would travel from Fastat to Cairo by donkey, where he was the doctor for Saladin and his whole family. Then in the late afternoon, he would go back home to Fastat, and the house was filled with people in his house who came to see him for medical advice. And then he would start learning and writing. On Shabbos, he would invite the community to come in the afternoon and teach them Torah. So the Rambam passed away 800 years ago, over 800 years ago. Moshe ben Maimon, his father, Maimon, was also a great teacher. And Maimonides, we call him the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, but Maimonides is like Greek for son of, so he was the son of Maimon. So the Rambam believed the Torah belongs to every Jew, and he did it. That was, as she said, the Rambam said about himself, Hashem put me in the world to spread Torah. And this is what he did. So the Mishnah Torah, why was it revolutionary? Up till that point, again, this is the 1100s, there was no systemized Jewish law. Talmud was not systematic. It's like a conversation that flows from topic to topic. And to know the halachic answer to a question, you have to know the whole Talmud. So the Rambam was the first to create an encyclopedia of Jewish law. Like we take it for granted that there's always a Shulchan Aruch. I I was one of the people in the middle 60s, early 70s, 74, to write the Rebbe, what can I do to do tshuva? How can I do tshuva? And the Rebbe answered, I believe the Shulchan Aruch has been translated into English. So I had an early, that's a good way to do. Now that's very practical. That's the way to do tshuva. Know what the laws were. So we take it, take it for granted that there's such a thing as Shulchan Aruch, but there wasn't at that time. There was no organized system of Jewish law. So the Rambam was the first to create such an encyclopedia. The first book of Mishnah Torah, the book of knowledge. What a Jew needs to know. That is an interesting subject. Altogether, there's 14 books. It's all halacha, all the halacha that a Jew needs to know, and it includes the time of Mashiach. Our Shulchan Aruch, they didn't include that. The Rambam includes the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Korbanos, including the time of Mashiach. Okay. So, and the Rambam said, Mishnah Torah, that every Jew should learn Tanakh, and then read my book. That's how they'll know Jewish law. Okay, that's reasonable. And yeah, so the Beis Hamikdash again is not in the Shulchan Aruch, but the Rambam include all the laws for the Beis Hamikdash. He doesn't give sources, thinking that would make it easier for people just to have the 14 books without all the sources written. But there were people that criticized it. The Rambam wanted everyone to have access. The Rambam also wrote an encyclopedia of the 613 mitzvahs, Sefer HaMitzvahs. Everyone knows that there's 613, but what are they? There are different opinions exactly of what the 613 mitzvahs are, and the Rambam explains why he considers the ones he picked as the 613 mitzvahs. Then he wrote he organized the 13 principles of faith, which no one had ever done before. What does a Jew need to believe? What does a Jew believe? The Rambam puts it in his introduction to Sanhedrin chapter 11, which is the chapter that speaks about Mashiach and Techiyas HaMesim. And even the fact they said 13 principles was controversial. A philosopher of that time, Yosef Albo, said you only need 3 principles. So not everyone was agreeing with the Rambam who lived in his time or shortly after. What the Rambam was able to do is he could take 50 pages of Talmud and sum it up in one paragraph, the halacha that a Jew needs to know. He was also a philosopher. He was well-versed in Greek philosophy, well-versed in Arabic philosophy, and he lifted up his philosophical works, lifted up the Jews. The young people in the 12th century felt inferior to the Greeks, the Arabs. Like, what's our philosophy? They started reading Greek and Arab philosophy. So the Rambam wrote Moreh Nevuchim, a guide to the perplexed, that he could answer many, many philosophical questions. The Rambam respected Aristotle, and the Rambam had a lot of self-confidence in the Torah, that the Torah is not afraid of questions. He was very open to answer the Torah. I always like the Torah is not afraid of questions. Isn't that reassuring? Right. The Rebbe also is not afraid of questions. The stories of college students coming to see the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would say, what questions, you have any questions on your heart, feel free to ask. And that already solves just knowing that one can ask all of our questions. Okay. So the Rambam wrote Moreh Nevuchim, a guide to the perplexed, and it revived Jewish scholars. It was considered revolutionary. The Rambam felt Hashem gave him a gift, and some accused him of intellectual arrogance, but it seems they didn't really understand. Okay, so there are the complaints about Mishnah Torah that the Rambam didn't give sources, that the Rambam took one side in an argument. Maybe people won't learn Talmud anymore. There were those who worried. We see that people still learn Talmud. So for hundreds of years, there was a bitter controversy over the Rambam. The Ashkenazi world worried about Aristotle being quoted. They felt it was too rational. Sefer Hamada was philosophy. The Ramban defended the Rambam. Rabbi Yonah of Gerona was very critical, and I'm just going to share this story that I heard from Y.Y. Jacobson. So Rabbi Yonah, Rabbeinu Yonah, he's a famous guy, he goes to the Dominican monks, Christians, and he said Jews will deny the Bible due to the Rambam's books. So in 1232, fires burnt the books of the Rambam. This was after the Rambam's death, 20 years after the Rambam's death in Paris, in front of that large cathedral. We won't say its name. It too burned down not too long ago. Okay, so this was 1232. And remember, this is before the printing press. For a book to be destroyed then, you understand how much blood, sweat, and tears went into every book. Then 10 or 12 years later, a Jewish heretic, Nicholas, went to the Pope in 1244, and 24 wagons of the Talmud were burnt by the same cathedral. 24 wagon loads of Talmud, again handwritten. Rabbi Meir of Rottenburg saw the fire, and he wrote a poem that's part of the Kinos that said on Tisha B'Av. So Rabbi Yonah realized that the burning of the Talmud was a result of burning the Rambam, that the ashes were mixed. And he realized he had made a colossal mistake, and he wrote a classic work, Shari Tshuva, The Gates of Tshuva. Excuse my cold, please. And the book is How to Deal with Mistakes, Big Mistakes, Tshuva. More Nevuchim also influenced the non-Jewish world. Then in 1984, in Acharon Shel Pesach, the Rebbe suggested to bring the Rambam to men, women, and children. Okay, let's try it now. So there were three paths that were opened up. Sefer HaMitzvahs, which really only takes a few minutes to do. It's, especially if you get it from Chabad.org. It lists the mitzvahs of the day, and it gives a little commentary on them. And it goes along with the 3 chapters of Rambam that are one of the ways of finishing it in 1 year. If one reads 3 chapters every day, one can finish the whole Mishnah Torah in 1 year. Or one can do 1 chapter a day for 3 years and do it, which is what I had the merit of doing the last cycle. I mean, it seems like a once-in-a-lifetime project anyway. It's interesting to know what the Rambam wrote about and his approach. Now I'm sort of just reading it more lightly, I don't feel the pressure. I don't feel like I have to read every word, but a lot of it is interesting. And then Sefer HaMitzvahs, which in the beginning, which I did for many, many years. Today is a good day to be re-inspired about the Rambam. If you haven't started one of these 3 projects, I recommend starting with Sefer HaMitzvahs because it could be just a 30-second commitment a day, and it's something that was very important to the Rebbe. So it seems like something that's good to do. Okay, so we should say a little bit about Shmos, the parsha, starting a new chumash. There were some years that I felt starting Shmos, oh no, I'm not ready to read about slavery in Mitzrayim. Oh no. And but my friend Miriam Nemenov told me that it's called Sefer HaGeula, shmos, that it's really about the Geula from Mitzrayim, receiving the Torah. So I think that's very important. I want to bless us all that we should find it as Sefer HaGeula. L'chaim. Okay. Shmos, the Parsha. Let's see. So in our Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu's parents are not introduced by name. Later in Vayera, when genealogy is given, we find out who they are. But in Parsha Shemos, we don't know anything about his parents. It's Parsha says, Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, vayikach es bas Levi. A man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. In the next scene, she becomes pregnant, she gives birth. They saw that the child was good. She hid him for 3 months and put him in a basket in the river. Who are the parents of the baby? We'll find out. Next Parsha. It was Amram, the son of Kahas, the son of Levi, and his mother was Yocheved Bas Levi. Amram married his aunt. And the Ramban writes that he was the Tzaddik Hador. Oh, thank you,
It's
Andy.
hot though, it's very hot.
I'm so sorry, coughing, having, but the show must go on. Maybe I'll just take a couple of minutes to collect myself. Maybe I should just give a very brief summary of the class. Not to bore, not to bore everyone with my coughing. So there's an idea in halacha that only a non-Jew can make something stop being an avodah zorah, only someone who worshipped it. Like you can't buy an idol in a store and say, well, I'm just going to use it as a garbage can. No, it was ever used as an idol. Only a non-Jew who worshipped it can make it not an idol. And we know that Bas Paro was coming down to bathe in the river when Moshe was placed in the river. His mother placed him by the side of the river. Bas Paro comes down and she's taking the whole avodah zorah off. She said a river is not a god. And she came down to bathe in the Nile after it was no longer an avodah zorah to purify herself from all the avodah zorah of her father's house. And as she did that, Moshe's basket could go into the Nile because it was no longer an avodah zorah. We know the story. She stretched out her hand, and they say her hand became very long to reach it. And of course, there's the lesson that to help someone, we don't know we can totally save them, but at least let's stretch out our hands and see what happens. We learn from Bas Paro. We don't actually know her name till Divrei Hayomim, where it mentions that her name is Batya, that Hashem says to her, you took my son and raised him and made him your son, so I'm going to make you my daughter. So Batya, the daughter of God. So then we have the great irony that Moshe doesn't want to drink, doesn't want to nurse from non-Jewish women. In the future, he's going to speak with the Shekhinah. And Miriam, his sister, offers to get a Jewish woman to nurse him. And it's his mother. This is irony. If you have to write a composition on irony, here's a good example. And his mother nurses him, and he comes to live in the palace of Paro. So the Paro wanted to destroy the Jewish people, and in his house is raised the child who is eventually going to destroy Egypt. Chaim. So now so then Moshe is so she's able to save Moshe. She's able to save Moshe and change Jewish history by stretching her hand out. So there's an interesting halacha here. There's a very interesting halacha that how does it relate? What if a mother can't nurse her own child? So in halacha, in an emergency, a non-Jewish woman could be hired to nurse a child, but the halacha recommends to only use a Jewish woman because this child could be like Moshe and speak to the Shekhinah. So I think that's a very interesting idea. And the Rebbe picks up on that idea that any child can be Moshe Rabbeinu. Any child could be someone who's going to speak to the Shekhinah. So just that to be able to look at children like that we don't, who knows that this could be a child. So a child should have Jewish milk. So, and the idea of Batya washing off her father's idolatry, this spiritual cleansing, and then she's able to save Moshe and change Jewish history because she could mavatal. She was able to make bittul the avodah zorah. When we use bittul in terms of people, I mean, there's like a very famous idea from Torah's Hanefesh that being bittul is a gift from Hashem. It means I feel Hashem's presence. I don't feel my ego. I feel Hashem's presence. Shiftless is what we work on. Shiftless is rectifying the ego. Rectifying the ego. Humility is something we have to work on. We're all working on. It's a lifetime activity, rectifying the ego. But to bittul the avodah zorah, it took a goy who worshipped it, and Batya was able to do that. So it's very, very, very strong irony, as you understand. And that's why the Torah emphasizes Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, Vayikach es bas Levi. It doesn't give their names. It's just two Jewish people. It's very nice if a Levi marries a Bas Levi, they can actually, the people put that on their wedding invitation. But this is how they're introduced, so that it's just any Jewish couple can give birth to Moshe. There's a story that Chaim Gutnick, Olav Sholem, the chief rabbi of Australia, tells that when he had Yechidus with the Rebbe asked him how Taras HaMishpacha was going in Australia, and he said, not good, weak, that it's weak. So the Rebbe urged him to give a series of classes on Taras HaMishpacha, and Rabbi Gutnick didn't think it would help, and the Rebbe relentlessly pushed him, and finally he agreed. And when he came back a year later, the Rebbe asked him, how did it go? And Rabbi Gutnick said, only one woman showed up. It was a big call. My wife and I explained it to her. And the next week, the same one woman came back. So Rabbi Gutnick said, I feel like it was a failure. And the Rebbe looked very serious and said to him, Reb Chaim, Viful mamas had Moshe Gahat. How many mamas did Moshe have? Ein mama, one mother. And that's a different perspective. Who knows? Who knows who was the woman who came? Who knows who is this one person? So we don't know. We don't really know the greatness of bringing another Jew closer to doing a mitzvah. Who knows who these souls are? Okay. So the halacha, this is halacha speaking about nursing mothers. Every child has to be treated like a potential Moshe Rabbeinu. One never knows what lies in the soul of a child. So we should never dismiss anyone in terms of a child's capabilities. Who knows? So we shouldn't underestimate the potential greatness of a child. The halacha says that we say about every child in a crib, he may be talking to the Shekhinah. And so this is the way we should look at every Jew. So tonight, right now, here in Eretz Yisrael, tonight, tomorrow is the Rambam's yartzeit. I recommend lighting a candle for Moshe ben Maimon. And then Thursday night, Friday, the Haftalah Tevis is the Alter Rebbe's yartzeit. So we have a lot of, this is a good week for renewing. We can renew our interest in learning Rambam, at least safer shel mitzvahs on Chabad.org, that 10-second commitment. Or it's interesting. I mean, if you get Chayenu, there's a lot of times the Rambam is interesting. Take a look from time to time. And then the Alter Rebbe's yartzeit should give us renewed vigor in our learning of Chassidus, to do Tanya, to do more Tanya, to live with the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe should have nachas from us. Okay, I'm going to stop here, but people should forgive me. I'm hoping to have 100% recovery by next week. Should we take a quick picture of Yitzhak Feivish ben Brina Malka should have a refuah shalema. The captives should be free. The soldiers should be safe. The Jewish people should have the geula. The whole world should have the geula shalema. Okay, let's take a picture. Put on your smiles. Come on, everybody. A little get well smile. Come on. Don't be shy, bracha. Ben and Alesha, Sephora. Oh, look, people are appearing. All right. 1, 2, 3. Great. So, love you all. Thank you for putting up with me, and see you again
What's
next
your Hebrew? What
Hashem.
is your Hebrew name?
Miriam Yehudis Bas Fina.
Fina?
It's a Yiddish name, like fine. Good. Yes.
Shlomo.
There you go. So refuah shalema to everyone, to one and all, in every level. Shalom, shalom. Thanks so much for coming.